Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. We're also sponsored by Architect, the premier site for hosting your decks on the internet. I love them and they love me, and it seems like a good reason for you to use them. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/ShivamB. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Architect and Quiver and by my patrons at patreon.com/ShivamB. Today, I'm very excited because there's a dude in the universe who I've wanted to talk to. And I mean, we've been friends for a very long time now, but I've wanted to have him on my show for also probably the length of my show. He's like a pillar of the Vorthos community, pillar of the art community, and frankly, one of the great flag wavers for everything not gameplay in Magic. I'm talking about my boy Vorthos Mike, Mike Linneman. Hey, buddy, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for bringing me on. I feel like an apparition, and finally, okay, bound to the material realm. I'm going to put you on the show. Let's chat.
I mean, look, dude, you are brilliant and you're inspirational in the community in terms of just like the amount of stuff you do and the amount of work that you have put in to elevate people's appreciation of Magic art, which is frankly, like, there's all the Ben Starks in the world who'll be like, oh yeah, you know what? I don't care. If the cards are just solid blocks with stats on them, I would be happy. And I'm like, fair, but you're also wrong. Magic has survived for 30 years because it looks sick as hell, and because we've been staring at it since we were kids and going like, this is the coolest thing in the world. You know, Melissa Benson's Shivan Dragon staring at you, or like, you know, Chris Rush's Island or Mountains, even like Lightning Bolt, friggin' Lightning Bolt. Like, the art of Magic is what drags people in generation after generation, keeps this game going for 30 years, and it had been deeply and woefully underappreciated for decades until you started reminding us that this stuff is sick and that we should care about it. Because, like, I talked to some of the dudes on like the Commander RC, and they're like, "Oh yeah, man! Like, I used to go and buy, like, I would trade booster packs for original artwork, or like, you know, I bought the original art for some insane card for like $40 at like out of some bargain bit." I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And it turns out people did not care about Magic art for a long time. And now, of course, you know, we look at like, oh, Magali's got an original artwork that she's selling, and it's going to be like $25,000 or whatever. And no lie, you have been a big part of that, buddy. And so I, as a Vorthos myself, your work has made my life better. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Well, I figure we all play a role in that, and I was not immune from that. I did buy Doubling Season for $300, and I always feel guilty about it.
Go to hell.
Yeah, I did. That was
Go to hell.
There's a Spectrum Books, which is like this art annual, and you can like submit them, and you have the best art award. You can win a gold award in Institutional, which is like one of the best Magic awards you can win. Super, super hard. And they had a live show called Spectrum Live, and it was in Kansas City, and nobody went. They did it 2 times, and then they moved it again, and it disappeared. And I bought Doubling Season for $300. That was
which Doubling Season? The original one from Ravnica?
The Doubling Season.
Oh,
yes,
my God.
The original Ravnica one.
Oh my God.
You know, it was a different time back then, but it just wasn't appreciated because it didn't have visibility, even though that's how most people get into the game. You know, Ben is my yellow lantern. So we're yellow. Like, yeah, man, you can play the game. You're not going to play against anybody, though, because that's how new people come, right? Is from the art. That's what you see. It's the marketing to get there. Like, you can play Uno by yourself, because that's what Magic is without art. It's just Uno.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Fancy Uno. So it is the thing that requires us to be bringing in new blood. It's the new planes. It's new art, new everything, instead of having, you know, the LCG model where it's the buy everything, you get everything. There's no real reason to promote any art or the other. It doesn't really matter. So that's a big thing. So we worked really, really hard at this. And in college, I brought back into the game, and I worked in the forums quite often back in the day. Like, the art forum was like me. I was one of the OGs of the forum, yelling at people, talking about art awards and whatever. Brought it to a different forum, really started writing to make it more visible. And I think the highlights of people will be like, wait, I can own this? What do you mean? That,
dude,
Pokemon you can't. Star Wars you can't. So how can you do this with Magic? And then that brought the awareness, the scarcity, and we took off from there.
Yeah, because like nowadays, I mean, I've tried a handful of times to buy some original artwork, and it is very expensive and very hard to do. Like, I think the closest I got to was the Gideon warship. That was from the Gideon spell book, where he's holding up the oblation to the statue, and I'm like, this is it for me. This is my favorite character doing the. Oh my god! And so, like,
well
getting
into
the print of that
thousands
just
immediately. It went high immediately.
Oh yeah.
And that's part of it is the people assume it. One is every art is digital, which you have to see on Reddit every single day. It's really irritating. The second is that all the art is so expensive; it's so unattainable. It's impossible expensive because what breaks through the noise is like Alpha or like the D&D set where one collector, the main D&D guy, tried to pick up almost everything. You don't see the everyday of like, here's a pencil sketch. Here's the thumbnails that they tore out of their sketchbook. That's the origin of the idea that our boy Hobbs likes to collect the thumbnails. They're little, but it's like the core creative thing. He likes having
right there.
Yeah. It's the raw creativity. And those are quite cheap.
Yeah, like one of my favorite artworks was Ryan Pankos did a handful of like I don't remember what they call them, like tests basically to do for there was an artwork for like Lieutenant that makes that this character holding up this Inventor's Apprentice, and he had done a bunch of like test paintings for it and was selling those, and I was like, and for like Sahili, just like color tests.
Yeah, the color studies.
Like, color study. That's a
color
word.
Studies. Yeah, you plan out where like the colors go, the lightest lights, the darkest dark, and it's almost like a little and it's not a paint by number, but it's
but it looks a little almost abstract and a little
like it. Yeah,
and I think it's just,
and sometimes they're not.
Yeah, but it gives you an evocative feeling of the thing, and sometimes they're so sick, and I've like thought really hard about like getting them once in a while, but then I'm like, I might just instead buy my small original art piece and get them to draw a sketch on the back of an AP, and then I feel really cool anyways. So
that's often what happens is it's an interesting area of how people get into art, right? You pick your favorite cards, like which art version do I want of Lawnmower Elves, which as we know, we have a brand new one now, the Lana Mom Elves. And you have to choose which one. And as soon as you choose there, then you choose your basics. Which basics do you draft? What's your 5? It's my favorite Javier question. I interviewed him 1,000 years ago when he was first world champion. And I'm like, what are your favorite basic lands? And he's like, I haven't thought about that. And then he like pulled them out and he's like, oh, these. And I'm like, okay, so you're part of this too. You just don't think of it as I'm a Vorthos guy. It's like,
oh yeah. Like, people will be like, oh man, I'm totally not a Vorthos. I'm like, okay, yeah, here's some draft bin lands. And I'm like, oh, I can't use those. I've got to have my Ice Age basics, or I've got to have my specific Torment basics that are in this. I'm like, you're a Vorthos.
And that's it. It's framed different. It's framed differently.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our relationship with art is what our experiences are, how we approach it. Like, do we have our kids do coloring and we put it on our fridge? Do we go to museums? Or our last time we went to a museum is when we went to a class and you didn't have fun.
Right.
So some of that piece of why I'm in Magic and not Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon or really caring about Diablo or Blizzard is really that Magic makes more art than anybody else. Other than like the Vatican at its height, because it's unique arts. Like the scale is enormous,
dude. I never actually thought about that, but when you think about the fact that there's like 1,600 cards or whatever a year, each of them has an individual piece of art, not counting like, okay, even if we discount like the 100 reprints or whatever it is, that naturalized for the 17th time. Each of those is an individual piece of art that somebody's had to make. This is more than like the freaking, the height of Renaissance Italy, where they're making all these paintings every day. That's actually mind-blowing to think about.
You think about a Hallmark card company. How many unique Hallmark cards do they make per year? Like unique ones are not redoing another
even
thing for
if
Valentine's.
It's more than 100, like I'd be surprised. Because 100's a lot. 100's a lot. Maybe? Couple hundred even.
Even like calendar companies, you have 12 at a time. So when you think of really scale of, okay, you have an altarpiece in like a Catholic church, and you have the different leaves that open, and there's maybe like 10 pieces total that are painting there. Like, how do you really understand how much larger it can be? And Magic, it doesn't really talk about that. You don't really think about that. They're like, oh, well, they just remix the things. It's like, no, these are unique commissioned works that are by hand made, not just spit outs. And we don't really put that into context because we don't see it outside of our game. Like we don't go to museums, we don't go to galleries, you don't see it winning at Sotheby's yet. But we're working very hard at that. And that's some of the next steps that we're working on, from visibility, awareness. Ben Stark actually choosing his favorite basic lands. Like, we'll get there. We'll work on that guy.
You know what? You're right, though, because like every draft comment you ever think of has a piece of art on it.
Every single one.
Every single piece of chaff that you leave on the side of the street, it has a piece of art on it. Somebody drew that. Like, you know, like that random 2/2 for 2 that you're just like, whatever, I've got 30 of these. Someone still sat and spent like 20 plus hours painting that thing.
I mean, you could think of it as a religious guy of like how many depictions of whoever it needs to be. Shiva, for example. How many unique depictions are there made every single year? And then you got to think, okay, well, there's some, you know, that are derivative or close to each other, whatever, but unique different things every single year. It's like devotionals.
Yeah.
Is the closest comparable of like saints with like Eastern Orthodox, where there's a bajillion of them. But they don't make new ones. They would just make
they're all
copies.
the same iconography over and over again, because that's the point.
That's the point of it. But like that idea of what if they all were unique? What if it wasn't a historical narrative of, well, this is what John the Baptist was like back in the day? It's like, okay, what if you had like a contemporary version of it? And then you still had that scale, and you could see like, okay, they'd be the only ones that could compete where magic is at. And that's why I'm here, is raising the profile of illustration into fine art, because it's seen as soulless, because you're told what to do. So thus the artist's soul into the raw creation isn't there, because it's a task. It's an assignment.
The only thing I could think of would be close would be like fan art for anime and manga, you know, like,
yeah,
that volume gets very, very loud. But you're right. Like that. I mean, there's just,
it's scale though. Like there's only so many like furry commissions you can do per year. Let's be honest. You can't do hundreds. You can do dozens though.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I think art is just such a fundamental part. I mean, for me, at least, it's such a fundamental part. Like somebody showed me today, like, because I just posted Elspeth on Twitter, and Elspeth is one of my favorite cards, one of my favorite art pieces. And someone was like, have you ever seen the Elspeth Crusade that Howard Lyon did? And I'm like, literally one of my favorite pieces of art of all time. You know, Elspeth leading the charges. I'm like, how many of these like one-off random cards for a random event that are just like masterpiece tier that nobody's ever seen again, because it was either banned or it's in a product nobody bought or whatever. And you're just like, what in the, how many of these art pieces are we just drowning in that we have no chance of ever seeing, because they're just infinite?
You've heard what Aaron Forsythe talked about this, that there will be a time in Magic that you don't know every card that's out at a given time.
And that time is yesterday.
That time is actually like 3 months ago. Where, you know, I don't open a pack every time and I look through every card. I don't open a box, because that's the only way to see it, is to see those weird commons, is you have to open packs like you're, you know, a 10-year-old again.
Yeah.
And we haven't done that in 15, 20 years. So there's going to be pieces that surprise and delight you. And that's a piece I want to bring back. I want to bring that like discovery, that I want to build an EDH deck again. I'm finding the artworks again in the encyclopedias. Remember those with the books?
Yeah.
The different pages?
Yes.
I want to bring that back to the players. The only way I can think to do that is to force them to interact with the art. It's to like shove it in front of their face. And I don't know if I need to do that on the tables of large tournaments. I don't know if it's at individual game stores that we need to like say, it's big, look at it, appreciate it.
Like, you know what, one of the first places that's like, I think worthwhile is literally the badges at Magic Cons. Piece of art that's hanging on your neck and everybody's seeing it all the time. And I remember, because I was walking with some WotC folks, and we were walking away from when we got our badges, and they're like, oh my God, they put this blah card on here, which is such good artwork. And I was like, oh wow. Yeah. Like choosing the art for these things that everybody sees is already a place to start. And you're like curious, and then you want to know more, and then you want to discover more. And of course, like the art in Magic hits the entire gamut of everything. Like Bloomburrow and Duskborn right there gives you the entire palette of the universe, right? Like between like cute fuzzy bunnies and I'm a cat made of spiders. It's like, what the?
You get both sides on that. I like the idea of like badges where people would have like customizable. Right. That's a very good idea, where it'd be like, okay, you have to choose from the new set, or there's these two sets, and you get to pick an artwork, and they'll make it on the badge. That's a
Yeah.
very good idea.
I think that would be sick because, like, here, I mean, make them all red so that they're all the guest VIP and like green for like the premiere, whatever. But then you get to, like, here's a selection of 5 to choose from or whatever.
The Black Lotus badge gets to pick. That's a perk.
Magic players love drafting, right?
They really do. They really do. And like, oh, I want to have the rares or whatever. That's a good idea.
At the end of the show, you trade and collect. Yeah, because like, I think like being able to disconnect the art from the cards helps really pop the art out more. And I mean, it's important to have the cards because obviously people are like, oh man, why is this beautiful piece of art on a forgettable draft comment? I'm like, because every card's got to have art on it. Yeah. But sometimes you're like, it's so. One of my favorite pieces of art in Magic, there's this card from, I think, it's a really crappy set. It was like from the second Mercadian Mask set or something like that, where it's this giant bird flying through and there's this glowing red sun behind it. So it looks like a Japanese piece of art of this soaring.
I know what this is. This is from Greg Staples. And it's they printed it in low res, if you remember.
Yeah, they was printed and it was like, but it's still one of the prettiest pieces of art I've ever seen on a card that is abject trash.
Just bad.
Yeah. Or like John Avon's Kamigawa depletion land cycle, which is like had no business going that hard.
That was the cartographer, though. I mean, that's other than pre-modern plays cartographer now, but otherwise, for a good 15 years, like that card was bad, but the art was so good.
Yeah,
and that was one of the shining examples of like it broke through the noise of I'm not going to see it. I don't know. I don't look at it. Whatever, and it actually got above the fold. Gift of Orzhova was the other one because people saw it foil.
You know what else got me? There's a card called Sisei's Ring, which is like a really bad soul ring, but it's got like all these people staring at this map and it's got like, Donato hands and this beautiful, and I'm like, oh my God, this art is.
I visited his place, his house. He does an open house once a year. And he makes like Donato's pesto, and you get to like eat all this Italian food that he has out. His like daughters are hanging out, having beer in his backyard. It's very much an Action Brunsing like lyric, like having a beer in Donato's backyard, right? It's a very funny thing. Sisei's Ring's in his bathroom.
What the hell, man?
It's in the little bathroom off the kitchen, like some people have those, and it's just on the wall. Just no big deal.
Like one of the best pieces of art in Magic, and it's just like hanging in the bathroom.
NBD. Thran Tome is also in that bathroom.
Oh my God.
Which is very funny.
That is hilarious to me.
Yeah, you're not supposed to put art in the bathroom. Like, don't do that. But, if you're an artist,
Yeah, and I mean, like, and you know how I feel about things like Guardian Automaton, like literally my favorite piece of art in Magic. Or like Crucible. I would kill to get the original for Crucible Worlds, but I'm pretty sure that thing is like $1 billion.
Yeah, that thing still is bajillion dollars.
Yeah, it's probably not likely.
It's not even the sketches, because it's the community part of it, makes it so super, super tough. Yeah, Guardian Automaton, that's I have the sketches for it. It's going to sit at my house until Shivam calls me and says, hey, I need those. And I'm like, all right, this is what they cost me, and you can get them for the exact same amount. Dude, but that's a one day.
We'll talk about that someday. Someday I will be.
It's a one day. But those are the opportunities that you have to really be aware of in our world of, you're a cosplayer, you win a cosplay, and you want the painting. Well, you have a window, and it's this big, and if you don't get it right away, then you got to wrestle it from somebody, and you best hope it's not above their couch, that they love it forever, because they're not going to move anytime soon unless they reprint it, and it's traditional in the reprint and not digital.
I remember I talked to Todd Lockwood once because he used to do famous D&D paintings of dragons and Dragonlance painting, and I saw he had the silver dragon from 3rd edition. I was like, oh my God, I want to own that. And he's like, yeah, well, I have priced it at a very exorbitantly high price. And I'm like, oh really? Why'd you do that? He's like, well, I love this painting and I wanted to stay in my house, but if somebody wants it so badly that they're willing to pay me whatever large number that was, guess what? I will have a very large number of money and I'll just paint me another one. And I'm like, that is the most reasonable thing I've ever heard anybody say. Like, hey, I'm just going to price it at a level that if you really want it that badly, happy birthday.
You can get that, but yeah.
How did you get, I mean, I feel like how did you get an art is stupid because like, how did you get into magic art specifically though?
How did I get into magic art? It was Boy Scouts. I mean, Boy Scouts. So stuck in a tent. It was a rainy weekend for a scout camp that I was in. I am an Eagle Scout, and when I joined scouting early on, because grew up in a small town. I mean, there's only so much things to do for like preteens. Like, you can't go anywhere. You can't really do much. We have a lake, but you can only canoe so many days in a row. So joined scouts, and we had a rainy camp out, and it was just a rainy weekend, and we were in tents a lot. And two of the older boys had magic decks, and it was like gross, like fourth edition, revised mix. No, it wasn't fourth edition. It was revised. It was revised and unlimited. They had a mix of those, and I couldn't tell the difference. I still struggle some days. And they were dirty, rubber bands around decks, what have you. And I got intended. As Garfield intended, and I got hooked on, them Dirkwood boars, and we talking killer bees, getting big,
yeah, baby.
Playing giant spider with the mouse friend, and it gives it the giant growth, kills the Sarah Angel, which you should not do. But listen, the spider got the mouse friend. They make it happen. And I just found that so fun. I found that such a and I'm not even talking about the gameplay. I'm just talking about what did I see on the art.
Mm-hmm.
Spider with mouse friend beats Sarah Angel. And Sarah Angel's best card in game, wins game. Well, not against a big spider, baby.
The art of Sarah Angel had such a huge part of bringing you into Magic. And like Sarah Angel and Benelish Hero and Serendibafreet with the green frame and the cool looking genie. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so sick.
That was the jam. Notice you don't say Armageddon because nobody had rares. Like, I couldn't find any of those things. So, I mean, that's how it started is it was just really cool decks. Everyone played a single color. I played green. Friend had a blue deck. Eventually, I made a black deck and, got to live the dream. Ritual, Hypnotic Specter, violence.
Wait, yes,
just
sir.
Violence. Is all like that's how it started. And from there, we just friends played, but we were stuck in such a small area. There was no local game store. So you had to drive like 45 minutes for the closest one. So meaning from age 11-ish to 16, we didn't have Friday Night Magic. Mm-hmm. So it was your boy, casual, outside, dirty cards, mainly marked, whatever. And it didn't matter. And it really was the luck of your mana because you knew what everybody's decks were because nobody could really add new cards easily, right? So it became that like total setup of that. So that's how the thing started. And I've always had an interest in art. My family's really big into it. I studied art history in college, worked in a museum, worked as an art director. So I did both sides of the coin.
You've actually had a really sick career because I know you've done art direction for like game companies and stuff before too.
Yeah. So
you know how this works.
I do know how. I gave a lot of people their first break, to be honest with you.
It's crazy.
So I work with Sid,
Siddharth Chaturvedi,
who's now German, American, Indian. Like he's still trying to figure out his slash of what that is, though.
Getting to meet him in Amsterdam was so sick because he knew who I was immediately, and I was just like, I came up to him and I was like shaking his hand, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm such a fan." He's like, "Yeah, I know who you are." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Well, there aren't that many daisies in the Magic." I'm like, reasonable, or at least that stature, right? And I'm like, okay, that's a fair statement. And he told me to talk to you to get in contact with him to get him on my show. So, Mike, I'm talking to you.
Happy to do it. He's really good
at sit on my show because he's cool,
really good with WhatsApp. Obviously, the time difference. I'm not good at time zones. Pretty notoriously bad with them. But he never gets interviewed.
I should get him on here because that'd be sick.
Because he's a painter's painter. He's like your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. Mm-hmm. He does these big threads of his favorite art history paintings, and then you can see the through line of like, okay, you like this from Pyle. That's how you did your Secret Lair Island. You were influenced by this directly. I can see the painting that you were in the museum at the time and said, oh, I like this. And then you added it into a card. It's like his demon that is obviously influenced by Indian iconographic elements. Like, that's obviously.
So funny.
That's one of his pieces I do own. I have that demon in my house because it's that good.
Dude, his art is sick, though. Like, I'm just like looking through his catalog right now.
He has so many good things. He just flies under the radar because, he's in Germany. So they just have less large scale events that people get to know him, get used to his work. But there's very few of his that miss. And some of those, they're so sublime good. Like his Archaeologist is just upside down and the lighting's perfect. The folds are great. It's phenomenal, but it's not on a heavily played card. So he doesn't always get considered in that space. Even with the Ixalan, where he had to do the naive art, those like primitively painted dinosaurs.
It's like, so good looking. Like
online, they don't. On a computer, they look bad. And then you get a card in your hand, and you're like, okay, these are cool,
dude. Like because the way he does a background that looks so like rough and distant, but then you look at the foreground picture and it's actually just like right there in your face. Oh man, it's
Yeah.
so sick.
So he was chosen for that because he can permeate his style quite a bit. So in Kamigawa, he did ink work, because the art directors know, like, listen, if I got something hard, Sid could really do anything we ask him to. So they give him all the weird assignments, and he just knocks it out of the park because he studies so much in art history. He's one that you want to have like a beer with, or you like have like a happy hour with, and you just pick his brain, and he just like exudes it upon you. That is like, oh, you know more than me. Oh, okay. All right, neat.
I don't know. I love that kind of conversation a lot. I think it's super fun to listen to people talk about things that they're super jazzed about, because it's just, I mean, like, honestly though, like, I think my favorites of his were like the ones from New Phyrexia or whatever one, where it's like all the very dark, like the Phyrexian arts that are like super strong brush strokes on white background, like Archfiend of the Dross or whatever, just looks so sick. So like, sick.
Him and Keikai both did those, and oh my god, they're just incredible idea of brilliance to say, like, what if we did it that way? And like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. So yeah, phenomenal dude. He's someone that you should chop it up with sometime. And those like sicko conversations of like when you get in the weeds, that's what I like to do at Magic Cons. Like,
yes,
when we had it in Minneapolis, I invited a bunch of the art buddies I know, and we took over a bar, and you know, we had like snackums and things. I think they had adult Pop-Tarts, which is a weird concept what that was. And I gave everybody a task, and we got printouts, like PowerPoint printouts, and it had like maybe 50 or 60 like Scryfall, shout out Scryfall, pictures of like card artworks. And I asked, what are your 5 favorites in Magic? What are the 5 best? Give me your 5 best, like you're a YouTube like version. 5 best arts in Magic the Gathering. Fast cut. And then I made everybody stand up and say, give me your 5. Stand in front of the group and talk to me about your 5 with your full chest. And that was the whole activity. So it encouraged this immediate conversation of why do you think that's the best? Why is that not number 6? Why is Jordan 3rd? You know, it was the sport brought into our world, and that was one of the highlights I've had in my Magic entire career. Is you find the smart people and you sit down and ask them. And I think we should do that with basic lands sometimes. Why do you want this one better?
Oh man, basic lands are literally my favorite thing in Magic, and I could talk about basics all day long forever, because each deck the land is like the thesis statement. That is like the fundamental core of what is this deck trying to do? What does it look like? It's like, what are we trying to evoke when I play this? You know, and to me, that just means, like, for instance, my Nira deck that I talk a lot about, it's red-blue, but it uses Japanese foil Theros lands, which are like the big mono symbol in space, because she's full of wild magic and chaos, and it's just this, you know, epic kind of, or my Enchantress deck uses like the amazing lands from the paper cut lands that were made out of in WoW, because it's got this shadowy. It's so. I mean, like your lands tell more about your deck to me than the commander does, than the other cards you do, because that's
I would agree with that.
What are you doing? What is the story you want me to believe? Where are you drawing this magic from? Right? Like that stuff matters to me a lot.
I think fully. And I think that like CEDH is just grasping this now. It's like, okay, you have, 85 cards of the same. Ha ha ha. Right. Now, which artworks are you choosing for your 85 of the same cards? And that's the thing I'd love to investigate at a Magic Con, is you have like a room, kind of like how we did in Tokyo, where we did like key sets, and it was like cards, and there was like a whole room, and it was like overwhelming. We could do those with basic lands, and it'd be like somehow a voting thing, or somehow what surprised you, and you just thrust in front of you. Then you're forced to interact with it, and I just don't think there's another way to do it other than bringing it to the players, because I can't do it at a museum. It's offsite. It's got to be where people already are. Hence why we're trying to do that with art shows, is forcing it into the space so people have to rewire their brains to be like, oh wait, I already like that basic. Oh, that's a full art. That's interesting. There's a goat in the background. That's neat.
I've been to the art show that you did at the Vegas art show that you did. That was insanely
2017, sick. 8,000 years ago. Yeah.
So good. And then I went to the one in Philly, which was also just incredible. Just absolute. I mean,
and no one went. Nobody went.
Because it was like the first real MagicCon, and everybody was so. I'm like, why was it outside the building? It should have been front and center in the building. It should be where the people are.
Yeah.
And
we learned that.
Yeah, but I was just like, God, this is so like when you stare at some of these things up close and you're like, first off, holy crap, that thing is like 5 feet long. What in the hell? How did you shrink it down to 2 inches by 3 inches or whatever? And what detail am I seeing? What, like, being able to see I love art museums and I'm a big fan of artwork. And one of my favorite things is going and looking at art and seeing how heavy is a painter's brushstroke, how
Right.
much are like, how much dimensionality are they putting into not just the painting itself or not the picture, but the physical medium of the painting. Like when you look at like Monet or Van Gogh or something and you're like, there's some divots being dug here. You got like some issues that you're working through, but it's beautiful. It's stunning. And like I was just in Granada and I was going through and I was looking at all the old passes in the Alhambra and looking at the artwork and the mosaic and stuff. And I'm like, some dude sat here with like a 10,000 pieces of glass and made a fully 3-dimensional mural. And you're like, what the hell is going on? How? And I love this so much.
Just time. I mean, we saw it in
Right?
Kaldheim where people carved Victor
Oh my
Adame and
God.
Adam Paquette carved their sagas out of wood.
Isn't that insane?
I want more people to see it. And we did get to show one of them that was kind of neat. But finding more opportunities like that, I think brings the magic in. Like Coat of Arms, when you realize it's actually not flat, it's a collage.
Yeah.
There's like lights in it. It's like a full shadow box.
It's so sick.
Like that, those are the sort of things I want people to have at MagicCon experiences where, I get to see something I didn't see. Maybe it's cropped and you get to see extra stuff, which is really, really fun.
You see a lot of like artists will post things on Twitter or whatever, like, here's the model that I built to paint after. That would be sick to see at their booth, right?
We want to have more maquettes. They're hard to travel because they're very fragile generally, but we had them at the first show in 2017. We had a track
it was
sit
super
there,
cool.
and that was one of the highlights for people. So bringing that context of, we want to do painting, we'd love to have sketch, we'd love to have art description, which you need approvals for. You know how that is. Mm-hmm. Down to what's the maquette, what's the model of clay that helped you figure out lighting. And then I want to do a step further. And that's the next step that I want to do is, how can you interact with it for a photo? So for example, our boy Chris Ron, everybody loves Chris Ron. He made the swords, sword of X and Y, sword of wizard and wizard. I would love to hit that. We have now for the trophies, which Kyle, over at Vulpin Props, who's undefeated, makes those things and you can hold them and they're quite strong. If we bring that into an art show where you're like entering the Mirrodin Vault, you're entering the Strixhaven Library, and you'd be able to hold a thing, take a picture. Maybe we could do it almost like weddings, where you have the photo booth and then it prints out. And sometimes at All-Star games at baseball, they make you into a baseball card. Like there's those opportunities that bring I saw the art, that was cool. And then I got to make a token with a prop that is the card. And then I get to play with it and it recontextualizes your experience with that art. So those are the levels that art shows that I want to get to rather than just painting. I want you to touch it, feel it, lick it, whatever.
I think one of the coolest experiences I had was either at Gen Con or at like, I don't even remember, maybe it must have been at Gen Con or a different Magic event where like a bunch of artists were sitting there. Olivia was dressed up in her cosplay and you could see like 10 famous Magic artists all trying to paint their version of what Olivia looks like. And you could see like just the way that they start and their sketches and their layers and going through. I'm like, this is the sick, because like it feels like it feels like true Magic when you watch somebody like, they draw a circle and they draw some other circles and you're like, and then suddenly it's Olivia and you're like, what the hell just happened?
You draw the rest of the owl, right? It's the art test.
Right, that's exactly what it is.
Draw the rest of the owl.
So,
that piece we want to come back to. That's changed though. That's the big thing that's changed in Grand Prix to Magic Cons, because
it must have been a Grand Prix.
It was because as soon as you leave your booth at a Magic Con, you lose money. Nobody's paying you. You're not signing anything. So every minute you're away from your booth, it directly impacts you. So that's a thing that I'm actively working on to say, listen, we want you on panels. Like, how fun would it be to have Ixalan all over again, and you'd have all the Latino artists working on it on a panel,
right?
And then they go through their art, and then they have like a show and tell, and that is so visceral to people. But they're away from their booth, and they lose money. So how do we compensate that? How do we subsidize that? How do we get them a special something for being, losing time? And I don't quite have the answer to that yet, but I'm working on that actively. And I think the Black Lotus badge people are a key, that, hey,
Yeah, for
show
sure.
up early, show up the night before.
I
Maybe
mean,
you get a special thing.
one of the coolest conversations I've ever had was having a video on here going basically art by art through LCI, telling me about like all the Guatemalan influence and everything. And I'm like, this is the sickest stuff in the world. Are you kidding me? This is insane. This is so good.
People want to see that, but they don't realize it until they're thrust in front of them. So those are the things I got to figure out how we do those. There has to be a way.
And it's just like, I don't know. There's a story I wanted to tell you that was 2 points ago, but I met Wayne Reynolds once at Gen Con in like 2002 or 3 or whatever, a million years ago. And when he was still doing booths and he would still do sketches for people. And I paid him to draw a sketch of one of my favorite characters of all time, Raceland from Dragonlance.
Hey, let's go.
And I paid him and he did it and he drew this beautiful like pen work thing. And I'm like, this is so sick. Great. And I reach over to get it from him and he's like, oh no, I'm not done. I'm like, what, really? And he takes his black marker that's got a thick wedge, like permanent marker on the end of it. It's like maybe a centimeter thick tip. And I'm like, what are you going to do with that? And he just starts going and scrawling, going ham on this thing. And I'm like, oh no, you don't know, you're going to destroy the art. And then he pulls it out and he shows me and it's like the sickest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's like full on this perfect character. The line work is like all the Wayne Reynolds edginess, but also in a flowy way that makes it the outline of the robe. And I'm like, okay, so the answer here is when you hand me my notebook back, that's when you're done. And I'm going to shut my damn mouth until then.
You're a professional.
Yeah. This is sick.
Yeah.
It was completely insane.
I love con commissions and sketches. Oh, yeah. I think that's being able to say, hey, I'd like to do this. I'd love for you. The people at the Magic Cons I want to do. I want to have those people that are not doing it through the mail. Hey, would you draw my dog? You know, I love people drawing one of my wiener dogs. They're funny little creatures. But the comics
drew Link from Zelda for me.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
It's so good.
Like those sort of things are just like that. It's such a memory to be made. And we don't get that at Friday Night Magic.
Yeah.
You have to go to the big cons or potentially a museum show, which I think we need to do. We're due. Multi-city tour. And as part of the programming for that, it's not just the art on the walls. Oh, there's educational programs at the museum. Oh, there's an artist who comes in and gets paid to do this, and they're going to do a sketch time. And all of those things are immediate in our future. It's just organizing with them and then finding a visionary at Wizards that's like, no, this is going to cost money, but our brand is now big enough that people are going to be knocking on the doors on us. Let's not be late. Let's get on.
Combine D&D and Magic art show and sell it out in every city in America. Easy.
I think so. The problem is the D&D art is all owned by like one guy. There's one guy who has like 95% of all D&D art. He did his D&D show at Luca this year in Luca.
Yeah, Italy, I know because like a bunch of my friends were there and they're like, "Oh my God, there's these Dragonlance paintings that we thought were lost forever." And it's like, nope, it's just the one guy pulling them out and putting them on display. And I'm like, great, I have to go to Italy to see the greatest piece of
yeah, it was there during late October to November, and that's one guy works it. Luckily, Magic has a few more images than D&D, right? Books versus cards. But we have that ability. It's just finding who's the curator that wants to get it done. I think the Lucas Museum, once that's ready to go, rolling in Los Angeles, narrative art, they're going to want to do a Magic show. The question is, what year, how big, multi-city tour? Because God knows East Coasters, heaven forbid they need to travel farther than 4 hours. As a Midwest person, I have to travel 6-8 regularly.
Okay, but you Midwesterners are like, oh yeah, man, I totally drove to Vegas. It was only 16 and a half hours. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you people? This is why we have airplanes.
Everything's far. Like there's every Magic artist in your state every single time. You even know the ones that were born there, like Winona, Noni, Nelson, and left Minnesota. You know everybody. That's just what you have to learn to do. And that's why when we go to Chicago, it's like a pilgrimage. That's why so many of us go to those shows, is because it's like something's close-ish. Yeah. We can pass Chimney Rock, have 2 extra wagon wheels, and we can get there Oregon Trail.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I just getting to know the artists over the years has been so cool because they're just all such wonderful people. Like Ryan Pankos is just the biggest sweetheart, absolute gem. Or like Aaron Miller, completely lovely. And these people are just so kind. They're so willing to help out and be helpful. And they love this stuff too, right? Like it's so cool.
They live for it. It's their career. But I would be remiss. I don't have many notes for our chat here, but there is one. We need to talk about Jason Rainville.
Oh my God. You mean my boy, Jason
We need to
Rainville?
talk about Jason Rainville because not everybody follows you on Twitter. Not everybody
Okay.
is aware of this situation. We need to talk about Jason Rainville.
Okay, so I'm just gonna set this up. First off, Jason Rainville is a Canadian artist, and he started. I don't remember when he started exactly, but around Oath of the Gatewatch, he did an art piece called Oracle of Dust, which is one of my favorite arts in
One of
all
the
of
best.
Magic.
One of the
It
best.
is like a meditating Eldrazi on the bank of a river of just death, and I'm like, this is the most Buddhist piece of art I've ever seen. Most Hindu piece. It is disillusion. It is like sublime.
Silly good.
And
Silly good.
I bought one of the first ever artist proofs he ever did. And when he was telling it, I sent him an email and I was like, hey man, some other artists will do things like draw sketches on the back, and that's cool. I love collecting sketches. I collect soldier tokens because I've gotten a bunch of really cool artists and wizard folks to draw soldiers for me. And he sat and I was like, can you draw me a soldier token? And he read the email and he's like, can you draw me a soldier token? And then he went on Twitter, stalked me, found a picture of me, drew me as a 16th century Mughal soldier with full on period armor in a beautiful arch and everything. And I was like, bro, you charged me $1. What the hell is wrong with you?
Doing? What are we doing?
What are you doing? This is not okay. It was it's like literally my pride and joy, one of the greatest things ever. And so like 10 years later, I get to go to Amsterdam. I go to MagicCon and he's there. And it's the first time I've gotten to meet him in person. And so I'm like, oh my God, I need to go see him. And he's like, come by my booth. I got the thing for you. And I'm like, you don't need to give me a thing. I just need to
go.
And I brought the token and I was like, Jason, this is like my favorite thing I own. This is one of the most important things I have. I'm so grateful. Can we take a picture together? I'm just really honored to meet you. And he's like, I hate that. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, you posted all the goddamn time and all I ever see is all the places I made mistakes. It's such a garbage sketch. I can't believe you keep and I'm just sitting here like, first off, I'm stunned. Then I'm angry because this is literally my favorite thing I own. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And he's like, so I made you another one. And I'm like,
you a new one. I got you a new one.
And he bought a frame and he had literally drawn that same character, but 10 years later. So it's got my current hairstyle, my current white beard. What if this soldier got promoted to general, And I was just like, first I was stun locked, then I started crying. Literally, what the hell is going on?
Me. This hole was made for me. Yeah.
It just like, and now I've got both of them standing on my like place of honor here in little butterfly frames staring at each other. And it's literally the greatest thing I've ever been given in my life. And Rainville is god tier artist. I love his art. I love everything he's ever done, especially like from the Battle for Zendikar Oath area when he did a lot of the jagged like bismuth style artwork for that. Even like the cruddy like land filtering land is just so gorgeous. And everything he's done, like the pirates and all this stuff is so good. And like, I want to have him draw a playmat of like Mughal architecture so I can just drop my thing in the middle of there and just have it look cool.
That's a very good idea.
I've been trying to get him to do that for decades and he's reticent, but it's fine. I'm not going to push him because the guy has given me already more than I can
one day.
ask for.
It's a 1 day piece. Yeah, he did Separatist Void Mage. It was one of the first depictions of a natural black hair in Magic that was unprompted. The big thing is unprompted. It's one thing if it's like, okay, would you please paint a Asian woman with this sort of hair? That's one thing. That's fine. It's very, very different if an artist says, no. I'm going to make a Latino lady that I'm going to hire as a model in 2001 and make cartographer. And the whole thing is, put some maps around her or whatever.
God, that's a different level. Good.
And that's what he did. I mean, the same thing with Pancoast and his portraits for the Kenriths, where he's like, no, I actually had to hire, a little black girl to paint her. And I'd love to revisit her one day too. Like he went out of his way to hire models that looked exactly as they wanted to be depicted. And then he painted it exactly. And then, of course, whenever these things model, he often gives them a card or a playmat. It's super adorable, and they get it after the fact. I've had to ship some of the playmats, and people get a really big thrill out of that. So,
because it's so cool, man.
There's always opportunities. If you know a magic artist that lives in your community, there is sometimes, their spouses love it, but, you get asked to pose for the 1,000th time. Eventually, it's like, kind of busy with other things. Can you get someone else to pose for this? And there's been some community members that have gotten that opportunity when they get to know an artist. And the artists are thank God, a new face. I get a new nose. Oh, God. That's such a thing.
Oh, you know what happened to me in Vegas this time around? I met Leon Tucker, who is the artist from Amsterdam. He doesn't have any special presence or anything, but he's an absolutely real sweetheart. And he did a card called Platoon Dispenser, which I use in my soldier deck. And I'm like, oh my God, I love this card. And he gave me a foil artist proof of it and just signed it. And I was like, this is so sick. Thank you so much. He like wrote a note on the back and everything. And then I was like, I collect soldier tokens. I was wondering if you'd be willing to draw a soldier token. He's like, can I draw one of the things coming out of the Platoon Dispenser? I've always wanted to. I'm like, brother, you can draw whatever the hell you want. And he starts, and I was like, I was expecting just another quick pencil sketch or something. 3 hours later, I come back and he's got like paint pens in his hand and he's just really like actually like painting this soldier. And I'm like, okay, well,
okay.
I'll be back later then.
Yeah, the passion and excitement goes a long way, and I don't think people realize that as much when they interact with artists at events.
Oh, yeah.
Of just, do you have a thing? Are they the one that make the thing? Are you hype about it? Artists remember that. Often it's just sign these cards. Here's the money. There's never that. Dude. This is why this is a big deal to me personally. This is why it's so significant. I traveled here to do that for you. Artists don't often get to hear that, and they want to. They want to hear those things to give you something a little extra special because it's so meaningful.
You know what? The first time I met Victor Adame at one of the Vegases, he had flown up from Mexico for that before he moved to the States. And like, I go up there, I go to his booth, and before I can even say more than hi, and he's like, oh, Shivam, hang on a second. I got something for you. He reaches down and he pulls out an Anointed Procession art proof, and on the back, he's like, I drew you a soldier token. And I'm like, what the hell? I haven't even said, how do you know who I am? It's like, of course I know who you are. We talk all the time. Fair. However,
amazing.
What?
Amazing. Back when he had like 15 dogs. Yeah. Back in the Mexico days. Yeah.
Oh my God.
People just get to know those things, and artists are around. They do pay attention. They don't always weigh in on,
Yeah, and they love, dude, artists love drawing. That's why they do this stuff.
They do. And they want to find those angles that excite them. Like when one of the art directors gives them like a specific piece that's like, this is my jam. You notice my personal work. You see what I'm working on, and you're giving me something that I want to paint. That's incredible. Thank you so much. Obviously, everybody wants to paint dragons. Ha ha ha. Sure. Yeah. But there's other things. It's like, I would really love to do architecture. I would really like to paint a scene of people. I would really like to paint a goblin. And once art directors know that, the art it's just better. It's objectively better because you're finding that synergy of they want to do it, and I've got a thing, and bam. You can see it with Eric Wilkerson on his recent Lawnmower Elves that the passion was there. Yeah. He's thinking about his own kids. How does he get that depiction? How does he make it feel lifelike? And you're like, oh, yeah, okay, that shows. That shows that it's not checking a box. You added something yourself here. And that's what elevates that illustration commission to fine art.
Or like when Titus draws really cool castles and things. He's just like, yeah, I want to draw architecture. I'm like, all right, let's go.
It really does. It really does. Like, I'd love for us to get back to like a good Innistrad. And Innistrad Remastered is coming. I want them to find some really good German-looking Prussian cities. Because we still haven't seen Nephalia.
Yeah.
We still have no idea where the elves went of Innistrad. It's never been explained. Like, those things are the deep in it. And for some of those sickos that grew up, they're like, I could just go outside. I live in Prague and just paint my city if you want me to.
Exactly. It's like, I'm just going to go down the street to see this ancient castle that was created by Ludwig von whatever.
I know. It's like Magali in southeast France where she's like, I can just draw a pastoral scene if you want me to.
Yeah, like
it's right outside. It's not that hard. But that sort of excitement things, and you find someone that's like, I live in an area that looks like this. I want that proof. I want to frame that proof. Do you have a print? Yeah. Do you have a playmat? That brings it to realness to them, and it I don't know, those sort of warm fuzzies stick around a long time when they're having those inevitable dark days where things aren't working, sketches aren't making sense. Like, they do think about those things, and they go back to that well. So I encourage people to always talk to them about that and express that as much as they can, because they do need it.
So in your art, as an art director, I was wondering, before we kind of wrap up this thing, I'm just wondering if you could kind of walk us through, what is it like trying to source art for a project? Like, how do you what do you have a theme in mind for the visual idea, and then a roster of artists that you ask, or what's going on?
Sure. Every place is a little different. But generally what you have is, before you do have a project, right, you need to show what your art needs are. Here are your art needs, and you work out through your designer or the project manager, whoever the pieces are that are making the thing, whatever it's a board game, book what have you, right? Like, what do you guys need? Okay, I need a 40K person, and I need this person depicted. You're like, cool. How many times? Let me know. Do you need a scene? Do you need to show where they are for context? And the same thing goes for like a card set to say, okay, you're doing a thing on Star Wars. Okay, if you're on Cloud City, what do you need to show on Cloud City? Are there things that are new that you need to do, which you need more description to explain what the heck's going on? Okay, fine. Then you make your list of things. Or, people, places. Usually it's architecture, landscapes, environment, and then it's scenes, people, spells, interactions.
So what happens if
Monsters.
an artist gives you something that isn't quite where you wanted it to be?
So that's part of you need to know what you're looking for beforehand. So for example, Titus Lunner, are you going to give him a group of orcs? You could, but probably not. Same thing with, I don't know, great example, Lars Grant West. Would you give Lars animals or not? Well, he worked in a zoo. He has tons of bones in his house of animals, loves anatomy. He likes monsters. He likes creating things. You have to learn what those are. And that's a key part of art direction is eventually you have like files in whatever it is. Even in my phone now, it connected to all my old things. So it says like green skins, which means orcs and goblins. Or it'd be like that. And the other would be like environment. It's like environment, not city. Or like different pieces. So you'd have tags. So you could go through like some sort of in database to say, okay, I want to have this, this, this. And then you have tags. And then you look for those things to say, okay, here is my world of people I could contact. I already know these 30 people are working on a different project. I email these 50 people or 30 people or 10 or whatever to say, hey, would you be available to work on this project? Here are some of the needs. I'm not going to give you exact things right away because everybody's just going to request Dragon then. I'm going to give here are all the needs. We got some chapter plates. We got some big ones. We got some little ones. Whatever the things need to be, rates, whatever. Are you even available? Or are you working on making an illustration for a beer label for your local brewery? Or are you working on D&D this month and you're going to be too busy with stuff? Are you traveling?
It's funny because like I remember talking to Todd Lockwood way early, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I used to be the house artist for Budweiser, and I got tired of drawing bubbles on beer labels, so I wanted to draw dragons instead." And I'm like, "Reasonable, reasonable."
That's amazing, but that's a career. So you have to ask them to say who's even available, and then from the people they're like, "Yep," or you ask them individually to be like, "Hey, Todd Lockwood, can you draw me a dragon?" Because Todd Lockwood, he can draw dragons. And often what you find is like, I didn't see, this person on this set. Well, it's because they were working on something else.
Right.
That's 90% of the issue. Not that they say no. They're just busy with something else. And they say, oh, could you wait 2 months? And then you look at your deadlines. Can you make it work for somebody that is quite good, low risk? They'll deliver. Can it still fit the timelines? So that's all the unsexy part of art direction work is saying this person's working on a secret layer. Okay, are they going to be done in time that I can use them for this project and get things back to me in this many weeks to get the thing done? That's the Sudoku that you have to play as an art director to say, okay, these 3 people can do goblins. We have 6 goblins. Do they get 2 apiece? Or does everybody get 1 and then we see who gets done first and we give them another one? So you go this weird chart and every person is different in that to make all the things work. And then you have from your tags the stretch projects. The ones that are like, okay, you've been asking me for a dragon. You've been asking me for a demon. I saw this personal work of yours. Okay, I trust you in this, but I'm going to check in often because there's risk that you won't deliver. You want to do a dragon, but I could have used Todd Lockwood and he would have knocked it out. But you said you could do it, so I trust in you. And at Magic, everybody's at the good level. Like there's no entry level fresh out of art school. Everybody's good. So most people can do those, but can they do it in the time? That's often a big issue with traditional painters. It's like, oh, you wanted to oil paint it. Can you get it done in 6 weeks? Can you actually deliver a 24-inch by 30-inch painting in the time period? Oh, by the way, I need 3 of them. Can you get those all done? Well, you look at Ryan Pankos. He's not making 1 art per set. He's doing a couple.
That's true.
Chris Ron does a couple per set. So can you get them all done in time? Do I trust that you can get them done in time? If I don't hear from you, do I have to check in? Or are you going to check in with me when you have issues? How do we get so all of that is project management. and then having a very sharp art eye really knows what you're looking for to say, here's a battle scene, guardian automaton. I want a scene. Give me a scene, Vincent Prost. Okay, how big is the crowd? You have to decide that as an art director. How big do you want the crowd to be? And you can tell it'll be, okay, I want it to be a crowd, but I don't want it to be too far out. I want to be able to see the person. But how you do that is up to you. Go. And then at thumbnail stage and sketch stage, you help guide them in the direction that they're going. They're like, I did these 3. I like this one the best. And you're like, I agree. Do that one. Go. And then you don't have the issues at the end because you saw it at those steps. So yeah, it's Sudoku. It's fancy Sudoku with project management is 90% of the job. And then the other 10% is a very sharp art eye to anticipate problems, usually with lighting and anatomy is usually the 2 big things. You need to know how shoulders connect, how hands look.
Doug Schuler doesn't know how to draw hands.
Well, listen, Rob Liefeld can't draw feet. Like it's okay. And you give people tests. So what I encourage students to do is, can you draw 2 people interacting? 2 people. One is on a horse, one is on the ground, and they're in some sort of setting, in the grass field, in the city. Can you have 2 people interacting where one is tall and one is low and one's on a horse? If you can paint that, you can get most artist commissions, most to be in the mix. It is incredibly difficult. But it's simple to say. Just, can you paint a horse? Can you put a person on a horse?
Horses are very hard, man. The musculature is crazy.
It's super hard. It's super hard. But if you can give it a try and have ways to get around it, then yeah, you're ready. But that's the level that you have to be. And you have to trust the person to say, like, you can draw a horse, right? Like, I think you can. Like, you're giving me 2 circles, but I need you to draw the rest of the owl. Do I trust you can draw the rest of the owl?
I think one of my favorite things, though, is watching, like, in Magic, watching these art directors take artists who I know are very famous for doing one style and having them do a style that I didn't know they could do that looks phenomenal. Like my boy Schmandrew, who has done the art for Shooting a Wheeler, dear friend of mine, one of my favorite artists. He does cutesy, happy, day glow, hyper pop things. And they're like, so we're going to put you on Duskmore. And you're going to have you draw the Meat Hook Massacre.
Your favorite colors are purple and pink.
It's like, what the hell? But it turns out he's phenomenal at this. Let's go.
When the quality's there, the quality's there. The dude just likes a lot of bright colors, and that's okay. That's totally cool. We can fit you in. But knowing that, that's part of the eye. When you do it so many times, okay, I can see what you're doing with armor here. This will translate to this. You can draw windows now on architecture. Okay, I see. I can trust you with this. But even then, often things get in the way. So, did your grandmother pass? Did you get COVID? Did your spouse have a baby? Like very real life things.
Did all your of a sudden make paint go like out of stock?
Right. I couldn't get it fast enough. I ran out. I needed to repaint something. Or digitally, I live in Florida. I had to pack up everything during the hurricane. Those are the real things that our directors have to deal with. That stuff all the time across the world. Oh, we have social unrest in the country I'm in. I don't know if my internet's going to work. The very real parts of it that they really do anticipate, and that's such a silly background thing, but that's the reality of making art for a global game, working on different time zones, responding at 8:30 p.m. at night sometimes.
Oh yeah, and like your artist is in Krakow or is in Taiwan, and you're like, okay,
Libya Prima, Indonesia. Love like how. Do you just delay feedback so you hear and you wait a day, hear and wait a bit, or do you just put a little hours at night? That some of those things is what makes art direction so hard. Of you have to be on call. Is it rewarding? Sure, it's fantastic, but it is much harder job than saying art is good, approved. Like there's so much more to it, and all of those skills that you don't only have like a lane. I went to school for this. I got trained in this. It's like no. It's a skill set that you have, and that can be trained through a variety of different things. That's one thing Wizards is working on right now. They need to add more art directors. You can see the job postings, I'm sure. And they're struggling to find a lot of quality people because it's just a hard skill set to find.
Yeah.
Do you know fantasy? Do you have background in it? Have you done this before? There's only so many places you can come from. Hallmark doesn't commission that much art. We just talked about that. Like, you need to
Yeah,
have
it's like
semblance of
everybody who
it.
knows how to do what Wizards does works at Wizards.
Yeah,
You
you
know?
works or worked.
Yeah.
Maybe went somewhere else. Maybe they work on a different game now. But it's a small pool. It really is. And you find those people that work on Kickstarters that make their own games. And then they can see like, oh, I can direct art. And you're like, okay, good luck on making 30, 40, 50 of them for a board game. It's a
Yeah.
lot. But cool thing, though.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like, I mean, I think what you've done to raise the profile of so many artists has been really beneficial both to them and to us in the community. Because like, I mean, when you've got infinite floods of cards, it's sometimes hard to find who do I like? Who are my favorite artists? How do I even pay attention until somebody surfaces his artwork and you're like, oh, I like that. And I need to know more about that. Like, for instance, like when we were younger and we were looking at revise and stuff, and there's like a million artists and they're doing every color and kind of style. There's no uniformity, but that also means like when I was a kid, I thought Drew Tucker's art was garbage. I hated abstract art. It didn't make any sense to me. As an adult, I think it's some of the best stuff in that era because it's just so perfect and evocative and clean. I'm like, oh, it turns out I just needed 40 years of life in order to appreciate this.
So wait. The fan art of Goku you saw on Tumblr when I was 12. Isn't super quality? What do you mean? What do you mean? For real, like that's a thing, and I like having the variety of it. It's why I hate saying hearing everything's digital because I'm like, you even realize like Igor Kiriluk making digital art looks like canvas painting on canvas, and that's just the brushes he uses. It looks like it to an untrained eye, but you need to have that variety, and that allows people to find their thing that works for them.
People are like, oh man, I hate digital. I'm like, oh really? You hate Magali? And they're like, no, Magali's amazing. And I'm like,
we had digital artworks in, beta, that, right? And people don't realize that. They think it's a newer phenomenon, and it's been around forever.
No, now like there's some stuff that is real dumb and bad, but the folks who are going to be drawing for Magic are not at that tier. Like you have to understand, you have to hit a certain threshold of quality in order to get there. Digital or physical, you have to be good. They're not going to hire you if you aren't good.
Yeah, we don't really talk about the wins and losses anymore. The thrills and jeers. The wag of the finger. We can't because it sticks with artists forever.
Right.
And when you wield that power, I mean, as an art director, for sure, you have to be very, very careful because everything you say is like the gold standard.
Yeah, and their ego matters.
Yeah, they're terrified of you then. Oh, yeah. But for artists, I was writing for Cool Stuff Inc. for so many years, and I had to be so careful about it because people will remember that forever. Forever. Because you can't say, oh, I didn't really like this artwork. You could get specific, and then they're like, well, I ran out of time because my grandma died. And then you're like, okay, it's unfinished. It's not bad. There's reasons why. Oh, it's like, oh, yeah, I was given 4 days to do this one. Or Jesper Miffers, yeah, I had to do that card in an afternoon. And you're like, okay, that all makes more sense now.
I mean, I remember I asked Jesper about Word of Command, the one that's just like two black eyes or whatever. And he's like, look, dude, I was just doing a color study to see what different shades of black look like. They needed artwork and they took it off my desk and printed it. What do you want me to do? I'm like, I'm not accusing you, bro. I'm just asking because it's been a question I've had for 30 years.
The best example, he's like, that wasn't supposed to be art. Like, I didn't approve that one.
No.
And you're like, well, sorry, bud. It's a different game.
Alpha is a different world.
It was a different game back then. They had to just figure it out. These days, it's hard to find something that's objectively bad. Like, there's marginal works, and to the real word of like marginal, like that's just not front center. It's not on a Planeswalker. Like,
and honestly, sometimes your favorite artist is just going to have a bad day.
Yeah. Well, if you have 3 or 4 artworks, can you make all of them award-winning? No chance. You'll have, 1 or 2 that are like, okay, this one's really, really good. This one is good. This one is your standard. And then this one you finished. and that's okay. Like the great artists talk about that quite a bit. Like Chris Ron and Ryan Pankos talk about their average. What does my average piece look like? What does it feel like? What is the impact of the average? And then that's what I'm trying to raise each year because I can't control what I get. I don't get a dragon every year.
Fair.
But I'm going to go hard on my commons such that when people see my work, they know it's me. They know what the quality's there. And I'm going to try to slowly improve that every single year.
Yeah. Man. And the thing is, like, Magic is just, I mean, every year I see some of my friends get like new art gigs in Magic, and I'm just so happy for them. Like my boy Joe just finally getting his first real cards in Bloomborough and everything. I'm like, oh, I'm so proud
Joe
of you, dude.
Cameron, yeah.
Yeah, he's such a good dude.
Phenomenal dude. He helped out immense amount at MagicCon Philly when we did 3 art shows in 3 days, which was a terrible idea.
Yeah, but it
for
was
the people
sick.
that went all 3 days, really liked it.
I was there. I loved it.
3 days, 3 different shows, and he was instrumental. And he was just a random community member, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I make art too." And then he gets into Magic. I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, and now he's got like really cute mice in freaking Bloomborough, and I'm just like, I'm so proud of him. It's so awesome. Oh man, Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. I love talking to you. I think you're a really cool dude, and we should do this again sometime.
We should talk art again soon. How about this? How about the next time I do an art show? Let's do a little curator tour. How does that sound?
I'm 100% here for that. I think that would be sick as hell.
I would love to do a closed door before it opens, a little curator tour. I think that would be. I think some of your listeners might like that unfiltered. I can't get there, but I want to still experience it.
Oh, I think it would be so sick. Grab a camera and just like, oh yeah, that'd be awesome. But
we'll call it a rain check. We'll call it a rain check.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. You know how to find me.
Yeah.
But if folks wanted to find you, where could they go?
Sure. There's 3 places people can find me. The first is on Blue Sky or X. Social media is under Vorthos Mike. Very, very simple. And I often just go by Mike. Like the Vorthos name is just a moniker of because people put V and then my name pops up. Whereas Mike is the second most common name in the world. Like we're never going to beat Muhammad. Like we're always going to be number 2. It's fine. That's first place. The second place, it is what it is. The second is the MTG Art Market. It's the big group I helped found. I'm the only remaining founding admin, actually. And that's a place where 98, 99% of all Magic art is sold. So you want to see large JPEGs for your YouTube channel, whatever those things need to be. If they have original art, it'll be there. That's the best place to find art and quickly. So I encourage people to stop by, and especially with all the Marvel happenings going on, Spider-Man set coming out, it's going to be cool to watch some of those things go pretty big, a little outside of
those numbers are going to get real. I mean, look, as a fan and collector, I'm a little like, but as a person who's just a friend of Pancoast and a friend of Magali and stuff, watching them get their paydays is a delight. It is so wonderful.
It's life-changing for those folks.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know. I like to see when Magic gets the spotlight a little bit off the normal.
I mean, the fact that Victor got to do Wolverine is so sick. Are you kidding me? That's so cool.
That's phenomenal. And, we got more coming. I want to see all the Spider-Mans. Like, I want to see a Spider-Verse. I want to see all of those things. So that's the 2 places, those 2 places. And then the third place to find me is at MagicCons.
Yeah.
I'm a bit anonymous at MagicCons. My badge only always says Mike. And that's intentional, because if people seek me out, I want them to seek me out. So whenever people send me a message anywhere and they're like, hey, I'd love to see you, love to talk shop, I'm always available. But I don't often host a thing on purpose because I'm always on call for artists. I'm always on call for an art show. So I'm their presence, and then behind the scenes, it's like a duck, swimming under the water.
But it's always great to see you nonetheless. And I love, like, even if we only run each other for like 5 minutes or whatever, it's still sick. It's great. We've been friends for a very long time now, so it's really, really cool. But yeah, thanks again for joining me today. And as always, my friend, if you want to find me, you can find me at Gearpuri Gears. You can find me anywhere podcasts are sold, or you can hear me on Shivam Wheeler Love Magic or on the Chronicles of Dragonlance. And at Patreon at patreon.com/ShivanB. But remember, my friends, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you next time.